The school board meeting was supposed to be about helping kids, but in front of teachers, parents, and even students, the room exploded into chaos when a board member suddenly lost control, calling a parent an unholy *** for speaking up. What followed shocked the entire community. The school board meeting began like any other, with parents shuffling into the crowded room, some holding notebooks, others clutching their children's hands tightly. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the smell of freshly printed agendas filled the air. Teachers whispered quietly in the back row, while board members straightened their papers and adjusted their microphones, pretending to be calm and professional. Everyone expected a long but ordinary discussion about budget cuts, new classroom rules, and the challenges facing the district. Yet beneath the surface, tension brewed, unspoken but felt. Parents were frustrated after months of unanswered emails and ignored phone calls. They wanted to be heard, to fight for their children's education. Among them was Marcus, a father of two, who had prepared carefully for this night. He rehearsed his words in the car, reminding himself to stay calm, even though his frustration was boiling inside. He believed in the power of speaking up, not just for his daughter who had been struggling in school, but for all the children in the district. As the chairperson called the meeting to order, papers rustled and pens clicked. The board members smiled stiffly, their voices rehearsed and polite, as if everything was under control. Parents sat forward in their chairs, listening, waiting, their eyes focused on the front table where decisions about their children's futures were being made. It felt like the calm before a storm, the kind of silence that lingers before thunder cracks open the sky. No one in the room could have imagined that this meeting, so ordinary, so routine at first, would soon spiral into chaos, exposing deep divides between parents and those elected to serve them. What began with polite introductions was about to become the most talked-about school board meeting in years. When the floor finally opened for public comments, Marcus stood up slowly, gripping the microphone with both hands as though steadying himself against the weight of his own frustration. His voice was calm at first, but carried a firmness that immediately drew the attention of the room. He spoke about the cracked ceilings in classrooms that leaked when it rained, the broken computers gathering dust in the library, and the fact that his daughter's math class had gone without a permanent teacher for weeks. Parents nodded in agreement, some murmuring, "That's right," under their breath. A few even clapped quietly, showing their support. Marcus wasn't shouting, he wasn't being rude, he was simply speaking the truth. He reminded the board that while they sat comfortably behind their long polished table, families were struggling to give their children the education they deserved. As he continued, his tone grew more passionate, his words sharper, and his eyes locked on the board members who avoided looking back at him. He asked where the money had gone, why programs were being cut, and why children were paying the price for adults' decisions. That was when something shifted in the room. Mr. Thompson, one of the board members, leaned back in his chair with a heavy sigh, tapping his pen loudly against the desk. His eyes rolled with impatience, as if Marcus's concerns were nothing more than a waste of time. The quiet support of the audience grew louder. Parents murmured angrily at the dismissive gesture. Marcus paused, staring directly at Thompson, and repeated his question, "Where is the money going?" The tension in the air was thick now, pressing down on everyone in the room. What had begun as a father's plea for answers was quickly transforming into a showdown that no one could walk away from unchanged. The room fell into an uneasy silence as Marcus's question echoed through the microphone. "Where is the money going?" Parents leaned forward, waiting for a response, their faces tense with anticipation. But instead of an answer, Mr. Thompson suddenly pushed his chair back and slammed his pen onto the desk so hard that the sound cracked across the room. His face flushed red, his voice rising with fury as he snapped, "You know what? You're an **** hole." Gasps filled the air instantly. The word hung heavy, shocking everyone into stillness for a brief moment. A mother quickly covered her child's ears, another parent muttered in disbelief, while several teachers shook their heads, their mouths open in stunned silence. Marcus stood frozen, the microphone trembling slightly in his grip, his face caught between anger and disbelief. For a father who had spoken with respect, to be cursed at publicly by an elected leader felt like a slap in the face. Whispers erupted across the room, then turned into shouts. "Did he really just say that?" one parent exclaimed. Others rose from their seats, pointing fingers toward Thompson, demanding he apologize. The board chair tried to gavel the room back into order, but the sound was drowned out by a wave of angry voices. Thompson sat back with crossed arms, glaring at Marcus with a defiant smirk, as though daring anyone to challenge him. The once structured meeting had shattered into chaos. People who had come simply to advocate for their children now felt they were in the middle of a battle between respect and arrogance. Phones were raised high, recording every second, capturing the insult that would soon travel far beyond the four walls of that boardroom. What had started as a father's plea had just ignited a public storm. The boardroom erupted like a fire that had been waiting for a single spark. Parents leapt to their feet, voices clashing in outrage, their anger echoing off the walls. Some shouted directly at Mr. Thompson, demanding that he apologize immediately. Others raised their phones high, determined to record every second of the meltdown. One mother, her voice trembling but fierce, yelled, "You work for us, not against us." The crowd roared in agreement, their frustration finally spilling out after months of being ignored. The board chair banged the gavel repeatedly, but the sound was powerless against the wave of fury flooding the room. A father pointed toward Thompson, calling him unfit to lead, while another mother shouted for his resignation on the spot. Teachers in the back, who had stayed quiet for so long, finally spoke up, their voices joining the parents in solidarity. The scene grew louder, more chaotic, until security guards rushed through the doors, attempting to calm the shouting and separate the angriest voices. But it was too late. The damage had been done. The insult had lit a fire that no gavel, no guard, and no polite speech could put out. News cameras, already set up in the corner, swung their lenses toward the uproar, capturing every moment for the evening broadcast. Parents knew this wasn't just about one insult anymore. It was about years of neglect, years of silence, years of feeling dismissed. Thompson sat stiffly at the table, refusing to back down, his face tight with defiance even as the room burned with anger around him. For the first time, the board members seemed to realize they were no longer in control. The parents had found their voice, and they weren't letting go. The meeting was no longer theirs, it belonged to the people. By the next morning, the chaos from the school board meeting was no longer confined to that single room. It had spread across the entire community. The video of Mr. Thompson's insult had gone viral overnight, shared thousands of times on social media, and replayed on every local news station. Parents, teachers, and even students watched in disbelief as the clip showed an elected leader insulting a father who only wanted answers. Outrage swept through the city like a storm. Petitions were launched within hours, demanding Thompson's resignation, and signatures poured in by the hundreds. Radio hosts debated the shocking behavior, while neighbors gathered in coffee shops and living rooms, shaking their heads and wondering how the situation had gotten so bad. At the center of it all, Marcus became a symbol, not just of one parent's frustration, but of every family who had been ignored or dismissed by the people in power. Parents who had once felt powerless now stood together, united by anger but fueled by hope. Teachers, long silent out of fear, joined them, finally raising their voices alongside the community they served. The school board, cornered by public outrage, was forced to confront the truth. Respect had been broken, trust had been shattered, and the people would no longer be silent. That single insult, hurled in a moment of arrogance, had awakened something larger than Thompson ever expected. It became the spark of a movement demanding accountability, respect, and real change in the schools. And as parents locked arms outside the board building, holding signs and chanting together, one thing became clear. The community had taken back its power. The meeting had ended in chaos, but the story was ending with something stronger. A community no longer afraid to speak, and a future they were determined to rebuild together.